Reclaim the work written in your stars and go from unfulfilled and stuck to confident, intuitive, and excited about your future. As someone who spent over 20 years in corporate land, unhappy and burned out, I now help women reclaim forgotten parts of themselves, trust their inner wisdom, and boldly step into careers that reflect their purpose and their power. I'm Karmen, your quantum career transition coach and your quantum mind body therapy life coach. Thank you for joining the Live in Divine Harmony podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for notifications so you never miss another episode. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Live in Divine Harmony podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And this one is for the women. Men, you can also stay as well. And let's talk about the 3 career mistakes women make. I went live on Instagram yesterday and I talked a little bit about this in general. And afterwards, I thought, we're going to expand on this in this week's podcast because I wanted to expand on this topic to help you during this time. So, if you are a woman, you're working in corporate, you are maybe thinking about entrepreneurship, but you're paralyzed about the what ifs, this is for you. If you are a woman who maybe you consider yourself a spiritual woman in a logical world and you are ready to let your soul lead, this is for you. You may be a caregiver, a mom, or maybe midlife woman who's ready to reclaim your identity and really step into your purpose outside of the roles that you've played. This is for you. It also could be for the woman who is maybe you're at the end of your time in corporate and you're curious about what is next for you. I've talked to a handful of you who are in that space, as well as I recently am speaking with women who are you are the mid-level executives. You've checked all the career boxes, but you still feel unfulfilled and almost stuck in this cycle that is draining your soul. I'm here to guide you through this process because that was me. Where in I was in corporate land, I call it corporate land, for over 20 years. And early on, I was working in marketing at the time, and we did everything in house. And I just kept thinking to myself, there has to be more to life than what I'm currently experiencing right now. I almost felt like I was on this hamster wheel and it was like Groundhog's Day. And especially at that time, It was I was tied to a calendar, and I pretty much could tell you what I was going to do every day. It was very, very predictable. The job was still predictable, believe it or not. And, I've worked in what I call a fancy factory before, very predictable. You must have your work done by this time every single day, no change. And even though some of my jobs have had that what I call creative outlet. It was still you do this from 8 to 5. Some places expected me to work past 5 o'clock. Some places there was an expectation to work on the weekend. You heard me share that in the last podcast where I could work up to I think it was like 7 to 10 days in a row. And there I wasn't even doing what I loved. It was just to pay the bills. And so being in that situation, it almost makes it worse. And what I have found is that you start a job with great intentions and you have this career path, this career idea. And by the way, side note, it used to be that we stayed at, one job for a while. And it's just simply not that way anymore. In fact, it's beautiful of how many options and possibilities and opportunities are available to us thanks to technology, thanks to social media, frankly. that were not there years ago, that probably we never even dreamed of years ago. And so it's really going within and looking at who you are now. Where are you in your life now? Because everybody's in a different on a different path, let's say, along your journey. And what is your soul yearning for? And so today, I'm going to share with you 3 career mistakes women make. And these are actually 3 different career mistakes that women make than what I have in my free PDF digital download, which you can get right now. That's actually 5 career mistakes that women make that are keeping you stuck. And you can go to hearts-joy.com, and I think it's towards maybe the middle to end of the front page where you can click. It's going to ask you for your name and email, and then it'll send you a link to download that PDF. You can work through that. By the way, with everything that I offer, everything's interactive. So in that PDF, it's going to give you actionable items to do right now, to implement into your life right now. I will also make sure there's a QR code if you're watching this video. And know that these are different. The first career mistake women make right now is their identity. We tend to wrap ourselves up in the identity of that job. For me personally, I can say that I wrap my identity up in that job of, well, no one else can do this but me. They're going to have to hire multiple people to do what I can do, which was true after I got fired. And yes, you bring your own uniqueness 100% to that job. You do. When we wrap our identity around it, we've wrapped our entire universe, our entire soul around it, where it's really difficult to lay it down when it's time to lay it down and say, okay, now it's time for me to move on and do what frankly God has called me to do, to follow my soul, my passion, and to truly utilize my gifts. Because and we're going to get into this here in a minute, a lot of us are using gifts for free and we aren't getting paid for them in these environments. When we have our identity wrapped into the career, into the job, there's a lot of control there instead of living in alignment with your soul, with your energy, which is why I still incorporate numerology into what I offer, because I like to look at your energy, what I call energy footprint, energy thumbprint. I can see that in your numerology. And it's going to be what's best in alignment for you. And that's going to be different than anybody else because you're unique. And so when you start to feel like you're trying to control things, you have to be in control, you need to be in control. That's different than boundaries, by the way. So, boundaries, which I talk about often, it's easy, it is now anyway for me, to say no. And I remember my last few months in corporate land when I said no and stood up for myself and said, look, if you're going to add on this other job, even though you say it's temporary, I know it's not. I feel like we've all heard that before. Oh, it's just temporary. Okay, well, I know it's not. And in the meantime, what's my new salary? They did not like that. And a lot of women, especially, it's hard for them to stand in their power and to stand up for yourself. And it wasn't a no immediately right away for me. But when they told me I wasn't getting any extra pay, I thought, well, I mean, I'm doing the work of 3 people right now. I'm not going to do the work of 4 because I was that good, because they knew I would get it done, which is why a lot of people came to me because they knew if I didn't know the answer, that I would send them to the person who did know the answer. Even the last, I would say, bridge job that I had a couple years ago, people would come to me all the time because they knew that I would get the task done. They knew that the other person had dropped the ball before, and so they would come to me to get it done. That's different. That's having boundaries versus control, where it's kind of like you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And things just, it feels like you're working in quicksand. And maybe not quicksand as much as mud. It feels like you're working in mud. If you've ever walked in mud, it is extremely hard and difficult to walk in mud because you are literally getting weighed down by the heaviness of the mud. And so when things start to become so difficult and chaotic for you, that's your sign. It's time to go. It's time to do something different. Which leads me to the second career mistake women make is the fear of the unknown, the fear of change, the fear of the money. Am I still going to get paid that steady paycheck? I just talked with a gal earlier today, and that's what she said. And a lot of entrepreneurs will have a bridge job or a side gig until the money is solid, or which really could be you right now, depending on where you are. And if you already are that person who would like to start a business, right? So I mentioned the first one is if you are thinking about entrepreneurship, you're stuck in that fear. Maybe you leave wherever you are now, depending on the situation. You go get a bridge job where you can still show up and be present, do the work. Your bills are getting paid, and it frees up your energy, all of your energy, your mind energy, your physical energy, your emotional energy for you to work on your business at night. By the way, I've been there. For everything I'm sharing with you in this podcast, I have been there because I knew deep down of what I was supposed to be doing. Now, has my business changed as I changed and expanded and grown? Absolutely 100%. I honestly don't know anybody's business who has stayed the same. It's actually one of the things they talked about. I actually do remember some of what I learned in college. One of it's the life cycles of a business. And you've heard me talk about how, Blockbuster, I think there's only one left at this point, went away because of Netflix. They didn't grow with the times. They didn't grow and expand as per technology and what people were wanting, their ideal clients. That was a choice that they made. I laugh because I think of Chi-Chi's because I remember when Chi-Chi's opened, and where I grew up, we didn't have one. So we drove to the quote unquote big city to go to Chi-Chi's. And then I remember several years later then when Don Pablo's opened up, and that was a huge rival for them. And when you look at the life cycle of Chi-Chi's, they ended up closing, and you can still purchase some of their items in the stores. You can still purchase their chips and their um, salsa in stores. And I'll never forget as a kid, I'll never forget going to those restaurants. It was like the thing to do. Now there's Mexican restaurants everywhere, at least where I live. They're everywhere. And some of those Mexican restaurants continued to grow and expand, and some of them didn't. There's always going to be fear. And it's a matter of, are you going to be in that frequency of fear, or are you going to say, Okay, that's actually my mind that's creating that fear. That's just a story that my mind has made up to stop me from really moving forward. That's one of the things I love about working in quantum. We can either choose to look to the quantum and our spherical reality for validation of what it is that we're seeking. Great example. Here in the 3D, if you're looking to purchase a red truck, guess what you see? A lot of red trucks. In spherical reality, it is your ideal truck, red truck, what it's equipped with, everything, the whole 9 yards. And that's what you continue to focus on in your spherical reality, not in this 3D reality. And literally, the fear melts away. Your energy frequency shifts, and then bam, you experience in 3D what it is that you've manifested because you've so focused on it in the spherical reality, because you've let go of fear. You've let go of fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of money. Because, by the way, anything that is constant is change. Everything is temporary. And when you can fully surrender and trust and know, you don't have to know the how because that's really not up to you, the quicker things happen, the quicker manifestations come in because it's already done. In spherical reality, it's already done because you believe it 100%, and it's a choice that you've made and you've decided this is what I'm going to experience. It doesn't mean you have to have all the answers. It doesn't mean that you're going to know the how, because when I first took the quantum mind body therapy program, I I knew it was going to be wonderful. I knew that there's healing involved. Like, I knew I would be healing. I didn't know to the level. And I had no idea how I was going to incorporate it into what I currently offer today, which is dramatically changed because it's the current offerings make the most sense for the focus. So if I chose to continue to have fear of change, I would not be here talking to you right now. By the way, for those of you who don't know yet, who are listening to this podcast right now, this podcast was born out of 2020. This podcast was born because a friend of mine called me, and the conversation was, I'm pretty sure, less than 2, 3 minutes long, if that. And it was, we need you right now. We need your voice. Stop hiding on social media, Karmen. So I started to go live. Now, then you could go live anywhere. Now there's some stipulations if you have X amount of followers. And I just ripped off the band-aid and was like, okay, scared. I had a lot of fear. I didn't know what I was doing. My earlier videos are cringe, cringe. And I still did it. I did it to be of service during that time. I did a lot of things to be of service during that time. And if you don't, you will stay where you are. There's a gal I follow on Instagram, and I love her work. Her name is Gailey Alex. She had a corporate land job that she finally quit and is now, I'm going to say, designing. And she does so much more than designing, but she will come into your home and literally give it the biggest facelift ever. And extremely inspirational. I'm in the middle of doing that here in my own home, and she is one of my inspirations. And she shows you so many different possibilities for your home because that's her gift. And she finally took that leap to leave her corporate land job. And she talks a lot about how so many people are tied to their steady paycheck. They're afraid to leave that steady paycheck. That's the very thing that's holding you back, though. And it's the fear that I won't have money coming in. And if you focus on that, guess what? You won't have the money coming in, period. You just won't because you've already told the universe that, guess what? Money's not going to come in and it's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult. So that's one of the focuses during a private session, to understand the difference between linear reality, spherical reality, how to truly step into and embody spherical reality and embody this new person who your soul is yearning to be. So instead of looking at the habits and focus on the next thing you're going to do, quote unquote, that takes longer to change. And the quantum change can happen instantly if you believe it and if you allow it because you've let go of control. You now are creating a new identity. You're embodying a new identity for yourself. The third career mistake is we tend to shortchange ourselves, especially as women. We don't share our gifts, or we think no one will pay us to share our gifts. We end up comparing ourselves to others. We end up lifting everyone else up but ourselves. Our self talk is horrible. And when you change your self talk, create a new identity for yourself, embody it, everything shifts in your life. So, a quick story about how my business started out. I was working with a life coach at the time. I was still working in corporate, my last corporate job. And at the end of our time together, I think we had like a few weeks left, it hit me that I'm an event planner and I have been doing event planning for a long time for a lot of different people, a lot of different, and not so much people, a lot of different entities. So churches, nonprofits, making them a lot of money and great fundraisers, right? Creating a great experience for people. And I was not getting paid to do it. And deep down, there was bitterness that I didn't realize that I had until that moment because I had not asked for any kind of equal, I'm going to say equal energy exchange, because everything's energy. And I was pouring myself out and pouring myself out and pouring myself out, and I felt depleted. And that's why. Because I was sharing my gifts, my God-given gifts, and I was really freaking good at it too. I still am. And I thought, what is going on? Why not just start my own event planning company? And I did. And that's what started this company, believe it or not, was event planning. I shortchanged myself for so many years. And by the way, I was in corporate land, definitely not doing events, doing something completely different. I had gone back to what I would say are my roots of a similar job industry that I honestly kind of fell into working through college. I can even remember looking back at my last corporate land job thinking, why are they giving me these tasks? I don't want to do this. You do know I got a D in accounting. I even said that to my assistant manager when they gave me a new task. I said, you do realize that I got a D in accounting, because I didn't want to do it. I fought it the whole way and I finally embraced it. And when I look back, I now understand why I learned everything that I learned all throughout my 20 plus years in corporate land, 100%, because I'm using it today, everything that I do. I'm still using my degree today, talking to you right now. So when we shortchange ourselves, we're not just shortchanging ourselves, we're actually doing a disservice to ourselves and everyone else around us, because we've decided that we're not going to share our God-given gifts with other people. because, and that goes back to control, because, it could be whatever your story of is what success is. Well, I've been doing this for so long. I've talked to some women who are in that category of I'm a mid-level executive. I've done it for so long. I just kind of in my career this way, but they're not happy at all. And they're second guessing themselves. There's a lot of unworthiness. And as we work together, we can uncover it and we can heal it for good, which is why I love doing this quantum mind body therapy work because it's unique and it's that healing component that I have now that I didn't have before. By the way, when you stay at an environment, in an environment that it's where you're unhappy, you're feeling unfulfilled, you're constantly either looking at the clock or you're tied to a calendar or you're wondering when is my next vacation? You staying there impacts your health. It impacts your mental health. It impacts your physical health. It impacts your emotional health. And I know because I always go back to my last 3-ish years because that was probably the worst for me. And if you've followed me on socials, I've started to share the story. I haven't shared the full story, right? We're sharing that out in bits and pieces. And I remember when I was diagnosed with IBS and my doctor gave me meds, which by the way, I'm very holistic now. I was not then. I drink a lot of Coke, Coca-Cola. I am a huge Coca-Cola collector, but I drink a lot of Coca-Cola then, a lot of chai tea lattes, which if you know me, you know that's like my favorite, which I have not had one since the beginning of this month. And I literally was constantly pumping myself full of caffeine, just food that was not healthy for you at all. I was not I went in and out of being a pescatarian at that time. So, yes, I was on those meds. I was on 2 or 3 meds. That was one of them. And my doctor said, "Normally, I would tell you that you're gonna have to live with this for the rest of your life." He said, "But for you, when you leave where you work, this will all go away because it's only caused by stress." And you would think that being fired is stressful, which it was. And I threw away those pills. I just came home and threw them away. I didn't need them anymore at all. And if we are not listening to our bodies, the signs are there. The stress signs are there. But you're so tied into and wrapped into the identity of the career of the job that it's stressing you out so much that when you leave, you will be this whole new person. It frees you up to the point where you may or may not recognize yourself afterwards. And I know at the time, your thought process and your perspective is one way. And then when you no longer work there, it's kind of like, what was I thinking that whole time? I have freedom now. Now, I'm not necessarily saying to become an entrepreneur, although I believe that's definitely where the world is going. And there's certain sectors of entrepreneurship that are going to benefit more than others. You can still work in corporate if you want, and that's what we get to discover during our time together. I've designed it so that you get to see for yourself what's going to work best for you because as I've mentioned before, you are that unique. You have that what I call magical amazingness that no one else has. I'm working with someone right now who retired a few years ago and is going back to school and completely reinventing herself. And we're still looking at this. We're still looking at What lights her up? What matters to her right now in the moment? Because in a few years, it's going to change. It always does. In conclusion, if you are a woman who desires a career, a calling, a path that aligns with your purpose, that aligns with financial freedom, that aligns with your values, that aligns with creativity and freedom, with your deep inner knowing, let's connect. I invite you, if you haven't done so yet, to download the free PDF digital download. There's 5 career mistakes in there that are keeping you stuck where you are right now. I look forward to connecting with you soon in a 30-minute clarity call. Until next time, sending you much love. Take care.